Astral Fate, we meet. Chapter 1, New Kids. You're gonna be late again, Martha called from downstairs with the usual mix of concern and exasperation in her voice. I put my chemistry textbook in my backpack. I know. Catherine's picking me up any minute. You can drive yourself, Martha said as I ran down the stairs. Your father left you what I would call a good car. I grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, trying to avoid her eyes. I prefer carpooling. It's better for the environment. Martha gave me her famous I wasn't born yesterday look. She'd been our housekeeper since before I was born and after Mum died. She'd stepped into the role of a surrogate mother as much as Dad would allow, which meant she knew exactly why I refused to learn to drive. Your mother wouldn't want you to. Catherine's here. I cut her off, spotting headlights through the window. Gotta go. I pressed a quick kiss on her cheek and dashed out the door before she could bring up Mom again. Some wounds never completely heal, no matter the passing years. Catherine was already leaning across the passenger seat to push the door open. Girl, one of these days, I'm leaving without you. No, you won't, I said, sliding in. You love me too much. Lucky for you, she grumbled, pulling away from the curb. Catherine Bates has been my best friend since freshman year, when we bonded over our shared love of fantasy novels and hatred of gym classes. I discovered my love for books in a very cringy way. I mean, who goes to the library just because it was a boy's hobby? Not any boy. The one and only guy who was cold, distant, and at the end even ghosted me. Well, I can be stupid at times. We're so late, I groaned, checking my phone. Mr. Pepper's going to kill me. Not if we use the back entrance, Catherine said, turning sharply into the school parking lot. She drove past rows of cars until I spotted a group gathered around a sleek black convertible. A tall guy with a perfectly drawn body, messy blonde brown hair stood in the center. He was the first one I noticed. To his left, a model-shaped blonde girl practically draped over his arm. Another girl to his right, brunette, the shortest in the group, with long straight black hair and blood-red lipstick, patted on his right arm and laughing. Three guys were there, but I couldn't see them since they were facing each other and looking at something. Probably a video or a meme because their laughter was heard from feet away. New kids? I asked, absently, gathering my kids. Catherine snorted. Where have you been? That's the whole McQuilly crew. They moved here like 3 weeks ago. The name triggered something in my brain, a faint echo of recognition. But Catherine was already parking, and I didn't have time to chase the memory. I'll text you after class, I said, jumping out of the car. Looked back to take a final glance, out of curiosity, of course, but they were already gone. I sprinted through the hallways, earning disapproving looks from all the teachers and hall monitors. By the time I reached English Lit, the final bell was seconds from ringing. I slipped into the classroom, slightly breathless, and headed for my usual seat in the third row, only to find it occupied. The guy I recognized sat there. He was with the something crew. Head bent over a notebook. Something about him seemed very familiar. The set of his shoulders, maybe, or the way his blonde brown hair fell across his forehead. Excuse me, I said, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. You're in my seat. He didn't look up immediately, just continued writing something in his notebook. I was trying to show patience, so I haven't said a word more. When he finally lifted his head, I felt like I'd been punched right in the stomach. Those uncommon blue eyes, not just any blue, a specific intense shade that seemed to see right through me and my soul. Eyes I couldn't place, but somehow knew. After a couple minutes of being completely ignored, "You're in my seat," I repeated, my voice coming out sharper than intended. He just stared at me with his unreadable expression. The entire class had gone quiet. watching our standoff. Finally, without a word, he stood up, towering over me. For a long, tense moment, we just looked at each other. I suddenly became awfully aware of Mr. Pepper clearing his throat at the front of the room. Then the guy turned to the person sitting behind my desk, Simon or something, and fixed him with such an intense stare that the poor kid actually flinched. The boy immediately gathered his things and moved to another desk. I kind of felt sad for the poor kid, then slid into my usual chair, feeling off balance and confused. I felt lost in a memory that doesn't really exist, or at least does not exist anymore. As he settled into the seat behind me, he got up, but not completely, leaned forward slowly. I felt his warm breath on my neck as he reached down to grab his backpack that he hung in my chair. And then he whispered, "Never again." Was it really a whisper? I have never heard such a clear, deep, and loud whisper in my entire life. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I forced myself to face forward, pretending to be completely absorbed in whatever Mr. Pepper was writing on the board. Never again what? He was in my seat. And why did his voice sound so, well, not that, but so familiar? I spent the entire class hyper-aware of his presence behind me, like a physical weight pressing against my back. Not once did I turn around, though every cell in my body seemed to be gravitating toward him. Am I cursed? When the bell rang, I gathered my things as quickly as possible and disappeared from the room before I or he could say anything else. Who was that guy? I demanded, dropping my lunch tray across from Catherine at the cafeteria. Which guy? Catherine asked, not looking up from her book. The one who took my seat in Pepper's class. Tall, brown hair, blue eyes, kind of intense. Catherine marked her page and looked up. Oh, that's Andrew McQuelly. He's part of that group I mentioned this morning. McQuelly. The name hit me again, stronger this time, but I still couldn't place it. What's his deal? I asked, trying to sound casual as I poked at my meat. No idea. They keep to themselves mostly. The two girls are Ira and Danny, and the other guys are Carson, Leo, and Tyler. They all moved here from Chicago or something. I glanced across the cafeteria to where the group sat together. Andrew was in the center, saying something that made the others laugh, but he didn't. He looked rather off. The blonde from this morning was perched beside him, with her hand on his arm again. That's Ira with him, Catherine said, following my gaze. Rumor has it they're a thing, but no one really knows for sure. Why would I care? I said, too quickly. Catherine raised an eyebrow, but didn't push it. Anyway, I have news. Book club is doing a London trip this summer. Good for them, I said, still distracted by the group across the cafeteria. Good for us, Catherine corrected. I put your name down on the list at the beginning of the year, remember? I tore my gaze away from Andrew's table. You did what? Relax. I figured we'd never actually qualify. We needed 18 people to make it happen, and we only had 12. But, she leaned forward with obvious excitement in her eyes. Guess who just joined and brought us to exactly 18? I followed her gaze back to Andrew's table and groaned. You've got to be kidding me. Nope. The whole McQuarrie pack signed up yesterday. We're going to London, baby. I stabbed my lunch, sadly not hungry. I can't go to London. I have things. What things? Catherine said, giving me the don't give me the bluff look. Your dad's never home, and Martha would love having the house to herself for a week. She wasn't wrong. Dad's job with the government, FBI or CIA, he never specified. I just know he catches real bad criminals, and it's top secret. I mean, he was barely home. Sometimes I'd go days without seeing him. Just notes left on the kitchen counter, fridge, or even on my room's door sometimes. Fine, I sighed. When is this literary adventure happening? July 18th, Catherine squealed, bouncing in her seat. 3 months of planning, and then we're off to England. Oh, and there's a meeting after school today to discuss details. Today? I groaned. Can't you just fill me in later? Nope. Everyone has to be there to get their information packets. It'll be quick, I promise. I sighed, already dreading seeing Andrew McWelly again. Something about him put me on edge in a way I couldn't explain. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I caught glimpses of Andrew and his friends between classes, but he never looked my way. By the time the final bell rang, I'd convinced myself that our strange encounter that morning was just a fluke. Catherine dragged me to the library, where several tables had been pushed together to form one large conference area. Miss Reynolds, the sweet but odd librarian and book club advisor, was handing out thick packets to the students already seated. Miss Reynolds was about 35 years old, sweet voice and a very caring behavior. However, from time to time she became a little overwhelmed with the book she'd be reading and acted in a very strange way. Kat and I used to think that she was reading witchcraft books and was being hunted on the spot. Ah, Catherine and Aspis. Now we're just waiting for our new members, Miss Reynolds said cheerfully. Catherine pulled me to 2 empty seats, and I tried to focus on the packets in front of me rather than the door. Still, my head snapped up the moment I heard them enter. McQuilly Pack moved as a unit, all designer clothes and confident smiles. Andrew led them, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. For a split second, something flickered across his face. Recognition, annoyance, before his expression settled back to neutrality. Catherine, ever the social butterfly, stood up immediately. Hey, I'm Catherine Bates, book club president, extended her hand to the nearest person, who happened to be Ira. The blonde smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Ira Collins. Catherine went down the line, shaking hands and making introductions. I reluctantly stood behind her, following her lead. When she reached Andrew, he shook her hand briefly. I steeled myself for my turn, but the moment Catherine moved aside, Andrew headed straight for the door. I stood there, hand held extended, feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment. Don't mind him, said a tall guy with glasses. Leo, I remembered. He's not big on touching. I dropped my hand, pretending I didn't care. Whatever. But just before Andrew disappeared through the doorway, he turned back. His eyes found mine across the room, and he said, clear enough for everyone to hear, I don't want the red parrot in my team. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me, then at each other in confusion. What does that mean? Catherine whispered. I shook my head, just as baffled. What red parrot? Ira laughed, breaking the tension. He means we need to split into 2 teams for the London trip, she explained. Different interests, different literary trails. Andrew already picked his team members. I felt a lump form in my throat. He'd singled me out, made it clear he didn't want me anywhere near him, and I didn't even know why. I didn't hate him. I didn't think we had a problem worth mentioning. I mean, it was just a seat, and I was gentle in how I reacted and acted. At least I believed so, but apparently we didn't share the same thoughts. Well, Catherine said, squeezing my hand, his loss. But I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning of whatever weird tension existed between Andrew McWelly and me. And as much as I wasn't really keen about him, I felt too embarrassed to just drop the case. I was totally determined to figure out what his problem was. End of chapter 1.